Hi friends! We're continuing our study of famous artists this month, but we're going to start our study in an unusual place. Today I want to start by talking about Minecraft. Yep, you heard me right. We're going to talk for just a minute about Minecraft and how looking at some images of this very popular game will help us to understand a very fancy and very old type of art. First, let's take a look at a few Minecraft images together. First, let's talk about my buddy Steve here. Now, whoever created Steve was an artist, but I want you to notice how he put Steve together. Look at the colors on Steve's face and on Steve's shirt. Especially let's look at Steve's face. Is it all one color? Are there big strokes of color? No. There are individual squares of different colors that make up Steve's face. We know these squares as pixels, and we would say that Steve is pixelated. Now let's look at this creeper. This creeper is made up of lots of little squares. Various shades of green, some black, some white, and the background is made up of lots of individual squares of color called pixels. Well, that might seem like a modern type of art, but it actually is very similar to a French style of art dating back to the 1800s. Are you surprised that Minecraft has something to do with fancy art from the 1800s? Well, it does. Because that style of art, where we use individual spaces of color next to each other, is called pointillism. Say this with me, point. Point. It's a French word that means point. And in the early 1800s, an artist by the last name of Seurat invented a kind of art called pointillism, where he used individual points or dots of color next to each other in order to allow the eyes to mix them together and create a new color in your brain. So when you look at Steve, you might say his face is brown. Or when you looked at that creeper, you might say the creeper is green. But after having looked at them, we realized that that brown was lots of different browns, not blended together, but next to each other. And that creeper was not just one shade of green, and not lots of greens blended and mixed together, but next to each other. That's exactly what Seurat did, but he used a paintbrush and oil paints rather than a computer. Let's take a look at some of his work. Here's a Seurat landscape that's similar to our creeper. Notice that Seurat used lots and lots of different colors of green to convey this landscape. Dark greens all the way back to little dots of light yellow green. Invite your eye to go all the way back to the horizon. Let's look at another landscape. But here you can see dots of many colors. Teeny tiny dots of purple and orange and yellow make up the tree trunks. Lots of different blues in the water. Oranges and beiges and golds in the sand. Greens in the trees, but not just greens, reds and yellows. Lots of different blues. There are so many different teeny tiny dots that make up this landscape. But Seurat didn't just paint landscapes. This is probably his most famous work of art. It's a mural. It is 7 feet tall by 10 feet wide, all containing teeny tiny dots. If we look up close at this gentleman's face, you can see just how many dots were used in his pointillism. Today we're going to recreate a Seurat painting of the Eiffel Tower. He was a French artist, and the Eiffel Tower is an icon of French culture. So grab your oil pastels and a piece of paper, and let's create this pointillist piece of art together. All right, let's get started. I printed out the original painting by Seurat so we could have it in view while we're creating our own reproduction. You can see that I didn't reproduce it exactly. I didn't put this bridge here in front of the Eiffel Tower, but opted instead to put some plants, a garden, or some grass. And I did not add this tree right here. You may decide that you want to add that, but I just kept mine fairly simple. You'll also notice that I made mine pretty small. And the reason I did that is because pointillism takes time. If we're doing all of these teeny little tiny dots, sometimes it's best to start small. So if you want to start small with me, you can go ahead and fold your paper into fourths. This way you'll have lots of different places. You can practice and make all sorts of different pointillist paintings today if you want. But I started mine just like that. I love the Eiffel Tower because it's really just a giant letter A with a tall top and a curved under bottom. See that, how it's kind of like a giant letter A with a line across and then a little upside down U at the bottom with some interesting marks. And so we're going to start our Eiffel Tower that same way. I'm not going to use a pencil or anything today. We're just going to go for it straight with our oil pastels. And I'm going to start by drawing that Eiffel Tower shape just with a few dots on my paper. So starting about here, I'm just going to make almost like making a little dashed line. I'm going to come up and then I'm going to come back down and make myself the beginnings of an A. I notice that there are two lines or two places that go across on this A. The first one is a little bit up higher and the second one is a little down low. Then I also notice that underneath the Eiffel Tower it's curved. So I'm going to make a little yellow rainbow right here. The inside of my Eiffel Tower, there's another little triangle, almost a trapezoid really, with a square top right here. And I'm going to give myself that outline. That's about as hard as it gets. The next thing we're going to do is just begin to add more color. So I'm going to use this dark yellow and I'm going to fill in, not all of it, but a good portion of my Eiffel Tower just to get a base color down. But I'll notice that Seurat didn't just use yellow. It looks like he used red and some blue. He used dark yellow and light yellow. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to my light yellow and I'm just going to, now I might have a little bit of green on there. If you have a piece of scratch paper, you can clean off your pastels that way, but it really doesn't matter. I'm going to start adding more dots. Notice I'm not coloring in, I'm just adding dots. To start, sometimes I press too hard on mine and I make a little mess. We'll just sweep that off or blow it so we don't get crumbs. I added my light yellow and I noticed on Seurat that he used a darker color on the side to maybe indicate a shadow. I'm going to use a little bit of red and maybe my dots will be a little bit smaller. Littler, smaller dots coming down the side. Notice I'm not being too particular about how close and far together they are. I'm going to make that stripe across with the red, and I notice there's another stripe with the red across here. I'm going to add a few dots coming down the inside of my trapezoid. And then I'm noticing that this bottom kind of rainbow part is much darker than the rest of my Eiffel Tower. And so I'm gonna add a lot more dots in some darker colors down here. Maybe I'll add some red. I'm gonna add some blue. And remember, we don't have purple in this set, but if we add the blue next to the red, sometimes they'll blend together, but sometimes from far away, they'll look like purple. And I have to tell you that Seurat not only liked art, but he really liked science as well. And he studied how the brain saw color. There's a big fancy word, chromoluminarism. Here, I'll write it for you here. In chromo means color, luminarism. That's lumen means light. So chromoluminarism is how the light reflects color and how our eyes see color. And so when Seurat created his artwork, he did it keeping in mind what the brain would do with all of these colors next to each other. I'm going to go back, and you can just add your dots however you want. I'm adding a little bit more blue in some of those darker places. Maybe a little bit up the edge up here just to give a little bit more shadow. You could come back and you could add some more yellows. You could even take some white if you want. Notice Mrs. Burke has really used my pastels. So yours might look like this too. You could even add a little bit of orange in some spots. Just keep feeling we're not coloring in, we're just adding more dots to fill in some of those spaces. All right, I'm feeling pretty good about my Eiffel Tower, and I'm ready to move on to my foreground here. I'm going to start just by putting some green dots in, just to tell myself that this is where I want some grass. You may choose any colors you want for down here, but I'm just going to start, and this is where you can kind of start to get loud, unless your family thinks that that drives them crazy. Then you might go a little bit slower. But if you want, you can get a little bit loud and start adding your dots like this. Now, Seurat did most of his paintings in oil paints with a brush, so he would dab with his brush. But before he started using oils, he used something called a Conte crayon, which is very much like an oil pastel. So he first experimented in Conte crayon before he moved on to oil pastel. Now, I started with just that plain old green, but now I'm going to make it more interesting. I'm going to add some light green, and then I'm going to think about that chromoluminarism, and I'm going to ask myself, what two colors, when mixed together, make green? Do you remember what they are? Blue and yellow. So I'm going to put some blue dots next to some yellow dots to add some more depth and interest. Remember when we looked at that very first landscape right after the creeper? There were definitely some spots where there was more blue, and there were some spots with more yellow, and they were kind of blended with the green. So you can make your grass as interesting as you'd like. You could even make it go back a little bit, have it be a little bit lighter at the top, maybe a little bit darker at the bottom. I'm going to go with this really darker blue. And you could even add little hints that maybe, oh, there's some little flowers poking up through there, or even just some shadows that are different colors. You can continue working on your grass as much as you want, adding any color that you want, really. But I'm going to move on to our sky just to show you how I did mine, and then you can create yours however you wanted. I notice here that in Seurat's painting, there's blues and yellows, and you can't really tell from this, but maybe some pinks and some grays in there as well. And I also note that in life and in art, the sky is usually lighter towards the horizon and darker as we get up to the top. And I created that same look here. And even if you were to look out your window today, you would notice that the color of the sky is usually lighter towards the ground and darker as you look up higher in the sky. So I'm going to start with my light color, and I'm going to cover my whole sky area with this light color. Now you can do it that way, or remember, if that drives your family crazy, you can do it a little softer like this. Remembering that we're going to see the sky through the Eiffel Tower. It's kind of see-through, so we've got some places inside our trapezoid and underneath our rainbow where we want to add those sky marks. So I'm going to fill first the whole sky with my really light blue. Then I'm going to start adding a little bit of darker blue, not all the way at the bottom, but maybe starting about halfway up. I'm going to just add a few dots of darker blue. And then as I get to the top, I'm going to add some more dots of this darker blue so that it gets a little bit darker as we move up. And I think it's fun to look back at Seurat's painting and to just add some interesting sky colors. I'm going to add a little bit of light pink. You don't have to add light pink if you don't want, but I'm going to add some just because I think it makes for a really interesting sky. I'm going to add maybe a little bit more of this darker blue, just a few dots up here. And I noticed in Seurat's painting that there was a lot of yellow in the sky. It almost made it look like the painting was glowing a little bit. And so I'm going to add quite a bit of yellow back into my sky here. I might even add a little bit of gray. I think I like a little bit of this pink too. It's so fun because usually when we create a painting, we just do our sky blue, don't we? But it's fun to put all of these dots together to create a painting. You may decide to go back and add more dots into your grass or more dots into your Eiffel Tower. There's no right or wrong way. There we go. In just a few minutes, we created our own Seurat. And here's the fun part. You have so many more spaces if you want to create your own pointillist painting. Maybe you're a Minecraft fan and you want to create a pixelated Minecraft pointillist painting. Or maybe you love soccer and you want to draw somebody on the soccer field. Maybe you like flowers or tomatoes or strawberries and you want to try a still life in pointillism. Or maybe you just really love color and you want to experiment with stripes or zigzags. Just have fun. Feel free to fill up all 4 squares or flip it over and do 4 more. And as you do, I want you to imagine Seurat and think about how many dots we put in just one tiny little painting. I wonder how many dots are in his huge 7-foot by 10-foot mural. Lots and lots of dots. I just realized that I had my camera in a different position today. And so you saw my water bottle and maybe my coffee cup and my phone sitting next to my artwork. But that's okay, because we do art in the middle of life. The most important thing is that I hope you had fun. That I hope you put lots and lots and lots of dots on your paper and that you made something new and interesting and learned a new technique today. I sure hope that you'll make some more. Take a picture, send it to your teacher. I'd love to see what it is that you're creating. Because I sure love that we get to draw together even when we're apart.